Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia SBDC's webinar series, Google and Beyond, Marketing and Managing on the Web. This series is designed to take a look at tools and techniques to help small businesses take their business to the next level on the web. Today's webinar, Managing Your Content Well Without Google Reader. All of our Google and Beyond webinars are presented by Ray Sidney Smith, digital strategist and soon-to-be author of the book Google Your Small Business and president of W3 Consulting. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type those out in the question window and Ray will do his best to answer them. Without further ado, here's Ray Sidney Smith.
Thank you, Tracy, and thank you to the Virginia SBDC Network for having me on for these webinars. So this morning we're going to be talking about managing RSS feeds without Google Reader, and just a couple of household administrative items. As Tracy said, you can always ask questions in the question panel, but after the webinar, feel free to go ahead and follow at W3 Consulting on Twitter, and you can ask us any questions that you had about the webinar material we talked about today. So going forward on the agenda, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about Google Reader's shutdown and really what it means. And then, of course, I'm going to take you through and we can show you how to access your data so that you can go ahead and get access to that. Then we're going to talk about the pros and cons of Reader's shutdown, why Google made the decision, and really what the shutdown means for us. The business functions that we need to replace in order to be able to really go on without Google Reader if you happen to be using it right now. And then we'll talk about the actual Google Reader alternatives, the tools that we can use to replace Google Reader. So just starting off, there was a lot of crying. There was an outpouring of folks really upset about Google Reader's demise. And so I'm sure that a lot of people were very upset about this. But at the end of the day, I really do want to impress upon everyone that there are solutions out there, and there always have been solutions out there to use outside of Google Reader. So never fear. But the reality is that Google Reader is shutting down on July 1st, and your accounts will be ceasing. So at that point, you want to make sure that you back up your data. So I'm going to take us into Google Reader right now so that you can see how to actually back up and download your data. Now, Google has been really amazing with regard to data privacy and what we call data liberation. They actually launched something called the Data Liberation Front, and the Data Liberation Front its mission is dedicated to helping you have access to your data underlying these cloud-based services. So that means that when you're using a service like any of Google's products, Google has 500 plus products and services, or Dropbox or Evernote or one of these other kinds of cloud-based services where you have all of this data about yourself in the cloud, you should be able to have access and be able to download that information and see it in essence. I mean, it's in a database file, but you should still be able to access it in some way, shape, or form. And so Google has created this organization called the Data Liberation Front in order to do that. And for those folks out there who, are concerned about being able to access your data, know that sort of Google has your back, all right? So I'm going to go and take you into Google Reader right now and show you how to get that information out so that we can have access to the data and not be fearful of not having access to it when D-Day happens, when July 1st happens. So I would recommend that you go ahead and do this now so that you don't have an issue with having access to it later. So note that when you log into Google Reader pretty much every time, Google will now tell you that on July 1st you're going to have it shut down, and you should go ahead and back up your data. And it's pretty simple to do. Here in the right-hand side panel, you can see that there's this little settings icon, and then down in the settings icon, we can go into the reader settings, okay? Now, under the reader settings, you can see that there's an import-export tab. We're just going to click on the import-export tab, and you can see down here you can download your data through what's called Takeout, Google Takeout, which is Google's product for being able to export data. So here what you can see is Google is estimating the size of my Reader files, and it's going to download a whole bunch of stuff associated with my Reader account, most of which I can't read. But some of it is important, like the XML file associated with my RSS feed subscriptions. Okay, so here it says, hey, you have an estimated file size. You have estimated 8 files that we're going to download, and it's going to be about 2.8 megabytes of data. Okay, so it goes ahead, and what it will do is when I click on Create Archive, it will go ahead and download for me an archive, basically a zip file, if you want to, basically an archive file, and so it will bundle together a whole bunch of data. Now it has all sorts of information about you in that bundle. If you've starred any items in Google Reader, if you have interacted with particular things, the items that you've added to particular folders, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, most of that data is useless without Google Reader specifically. The information that's going to be helpful, as I said, is going to be that XML file that has your subscriptions in it, okay? And that's the file that you're going to be able to pull over. So you're going to unarchive the archive file, and inside of it you're going to find an XML file, basically a file that ends in .xml. And once you see that file, you can just basically upload it into some of the services that we'll be talking about at the tail end of the webinar this morning. So the tools that you can use to replace. So lots of really seamless ways of doing that. So if we go back over here to Takeout, though, you can see that we have the Reader service that I can download, and I can go back and I can see, back on March 28th, I downloaded the file already, and the size of the file, was 6.6 megabytes, and so I downloaded all the file pieces back then as well. So, I know what I've downloaded, I know what I haven't downloaded, so really good for you to be able to know when you're downloading content and archives from Google products and knowing where you have them. So in general, it's a good idea to back up your data that's within the cloud through Google. I don't particularly have any reason to believe that Google will lose your data, but mistakes do happen. You might have a circumstance where you have modified information and come back to it later and realize that you deleted something, involuntarily. So this is a great opportunity really for the reminder that sometimes you accidentally delete things. So go ahead and make backups of some of these things so that you have snapshots to go back to. So let's go back to the presentation and wonderful. All right, so that's getting your data out of Google. And so at that point, you're pretty much out of Google Reader, and now we have to sort of lament the reasons for Google Reader going. So first, the reason why I really loved Google Reader was its Google Apps support. The fact that it was built into Google Apps as a part of the part of the service and the platform. So now that Google Reader will not be in it, you won't be able to use Google Reader within Google Apps. So if you're your business trying to communicate things, represented through your Google Reader account, you can't do that anymore. That's sad, because many times it's sort of like remember the days of newspaper clippings? You used to be able to clip a newspaper or a magazine article, and you'd literally mail it to a client when you thought it was pertinent to them, and that would happen quite frequently with me because I am a heavy newspaper and magazine reader. Of course, now that doesn't exist because they're all digital for the most part for me. So it's a matter of sending an email, and so in Google Reader, I'd frequently find something that was interesting to someone, and right below it, I could click on email, and I could shoot off an email associated with that article that I was reading. Well, inside Google Apps, it would be sending it from my email address at w3cinc.com as opposed to my Gmail account. And I really, really enjoyed that. You won't have that now. However, in some of the services, you do have the ability to sign up using your Google Apps email account. So it really behooves you, as you're going forward, that if you are planning on using these tools and you have a Google Apps account, go ahead and sign up for these services through your Google Apps account, so that your Google Apps email account, so that you are continuing the consistency of your brand in front of the clients that you'd like to send information to. Second, of course, is the consolidated management of all of this information coming to you and all of the information that you want to go out to clients in the same space. So again, this is sort of a limited impact because we'll be able to use Google Alerts to manage some of these things. The problem is that Google Alerts was sort of built in to the Google Reader interface under the discovery functions for Google Reader. Now it's going to be sort of a two-step process always. You're going to have to go to Google Alerts and set up the Google Alert, click on RSS for the feed, pull the feed, and then put it into your new Reader profile and in your new Reader subscriptions. Okay, so it's just going to be a two-step process now. It's not going to be right within the Google Reader account, but for the most part, you'll be able to do that as well. So those are the real reasons we're sad to see Google Reader go, but there are also some really great positive reasons for Google Reader's demise. So one, most people don't think about this, but being in the technology world, I am extremely excited about the fact that there are so many opportunities now for software developers and web developers to step in to really reinvigorate the reader concept, okay? And so readers have become stagnant technology. I understand where Google's perspective is, and so just so you know what Google's perspective is Google Plus, and Google Plus needs to bring more people into the social, local, mobile world and connecting those pieces of the puzzle for them and unifying their services. So yesterday began what's called Google I/O Conference 2013, and it's Google's developer conference. It's the huge conference that happens every year over at the Moscone Center in California. And the reality is that Google has just announced a whole bunch of new changes to their system, and the new changes are all about this unification of all of their products so that it's a much more seamless interaction between Google products and how much information they understand about you and how much easier they can make things for you as you're using these products. So very, very cool stuff. And at the same time, an amazing opportunity now that Google Reader has been set aside for other smaller players in the market to come in and really help do some fun, amazing things with it. And I'll talk about that when we get to the tools, because really it's an amazing opportunity for them. Next up is showing Google that RSS technology is not dead. So I really, really have this hope that as we start using these new RSS feed technologies, that we make a huge impact so that Google really understands from a top level how important RSS technology is, so that they implement it within Google+, something they haven't done yet. And I really, really would like for them to do. It makes so much sense for them to be using RSS technology. Of course, the reason they don't want to use RSS technology within Google Plus is that they don't want people to outbound curate outside of Google Plus. They want people to inbound curate into Google Plus. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that one presumes that you are trying to market when you're a business on Google+. And so if you're trying to use your RSS feed to send a tweet or to send a post to Facebook, you can't do that currently without some really major workarounds or by manually posting to each of those networks. And so there's a little bit of a problem there, but I think that Google will hopefully understand, get on the bandwagon, and sort of get with the program, and they'll understand RSS technology is really important and get it on the roadmap for Google+. Next is that it's given new life to RSS because there are all these people who were outraged that Google Reader was going away. And the funny part about this is that a friend of mine came to me and said, this is really terrible that Google Reader is going away. And I said to her, well, do you use it? And she said, oh, no. And so I said, well, then what happened? She says, as soon as I heard about the announcement, I went and signed up. And so I said, well, that really doesn't help you because now you only have a couple of months to go before it goes away. And she said, well, that led me to learning about all of these new RSS technologies and all of these new feeds that I could follow, and now I can manage my information so much better. And so what it's done is it's really made people aware that there are RSS readers out there in the first place. So this is actually a really amazing opportunity for us all to get an idea of what RSS technology can do and really do some really amazing things with it. So that's all good as well. Next up is really figuring out the business functions that we need to replace from Google Reader. Google Reader did do some really amazing set of tools, business functions, right within the same space. And those things are, of course, inbound marketing information management. And what that really means is, as I talked about in the original webinar, managing your content well with Google Reader, you are attempting to capture several different types of inbound marketing information. So it could be as simple as marketing research, plugging in a keyword into the content discovery area and getting all of the information that you want about your business or industry. It could be following the blogs of your industry and following the blogs of your competitors, following your own blogs, because it's really important for you to pay attention to what your own brand is putting out if you have people putting it out that's not you. And even when you're putting it out yourself, it's really important for you to follow yourself so you can see what it looks like, so that you can have that iterative approach, being able to review and make it better over time, and also to see when problems happen. So many times I see that with regard to my own outbound communications in my personal life. I'll send something out via a social media portal or something like that, and then I'll see it on my own side because I'll subscribe to my own feeds, and then I'll say, oh my gosh, this was misspelled, or that didn't look right. Let me go correct that. So as an inbound marketing piece of a tool, it's really, really helpful for you to be able to capture all of that information and keep it all in one space. Next, of course, is outbound content curation. And what that really means is that you can read the blogs of your industry, read the blogs of tangential industries, read news and so on and so forth, and you could share the content that makes most sense to the networks, the social networks that make most sense to you. Google Reader also allowed you to be able to directly share to your own blog if you wanted to, and other types of services that would allow you to be able to do that. So the outbound component to this, which is, I find this to be interesting for someone else, and I can share that on to someone else. The outbound sharing is a function that we, of course, have to replace as well. And while I don't talk about that so much here in depth about the tools to replace Google Reader, I would recommend you look into StumbleUpon and really get around to using that tool, because it's absolutely probably the next most amazing tool to doing content curation other than Google Reader was. So really look at the interface of StumbleUpon and see if that works for you. Again, we're consistently limited by the fact that it doesn't broadcast, and I'll talk about this about another tool shortly, it doesn't broadcast to all of the networks that you might want it to. It only broadcasts to a certain number of them. I think it's Facebook and Twitter that I think it currently pushes out to. But the point is that you at least have that to start with, and you can potentially use the push to Facebook to launch to push to other networks as well if you do some automation there in regard to content curation. Next up are business information alerts. You want to be able to have an alert that is covering all the major keywords associated with your industry. And so you might set up a Google Alerts RSS feed and have that in your Google Reader. Well, now that you can't have that, you'll have to do it again, like I said earlier, in the two-step process. So in order to take over business information alerts, all you're going to do is go over to your Google Alerts account and look at all of your RSS feeds and assess whether or not they should be in email, and they should send you an email on a regular basis, with those particular items. For example, I have various keywords associated with my industry, and I always make sure that they email those to me as opposed to the RSS feed, only because I consider those keyword items on a weekly basis very important. And so I want to be able to see the very important news associated with my industry on that weekly basis, and I don't particularly need to follow it on any more often because I'm reading about it every day. But the reality is I want to see what Google believes is the most important business information alerts. But on the inverse side of that is that I, of course, have a Google alert set up for my own name, all of my key employees, my business name, and all the misspellings of my business name. And so those come in as an RSS feed, and so I can check those on a regular basis. Well, you might decide that it doesn't happen as often for your name to be Googled or for your name to be showing up in the search engines, so you might just need it to be set up as an email whenever it happens, and you can go ahead and do that within Google Alerts, and I think I've shown you that in prior webinars. So you want to use that for the business information alerts. Again, now you're just going to take those subscription feeds that you want to and put those into your new Reader app. Okay, so we can do that. Content discovery. Content discovery is probably going to go back to StumbleUpon and really going back to now Google search. All right, so part of the content curation is built into StumbleUpon. Obviously, the part of content discovery is built into StumbleUpon, and there are so many websites out there where you can find new content that really it behooves you to go to Google, type in your keyword search term for whatever content you're trying to discover, and then click on the blogs tab there at the top. And so I should actually show this to you just so you have a good idea. And so what we're going to do here is just go to google.com. And so right here from the interface, you can see that I can type in almost any keyword term. So I'll just type in Google Reader. And as you can see, it starts to do the search for me. I didn't even have to press enter, by the way. It's already done this search for me without me doing anything, but there we go. And you can see across the top bar, across the white bar here, you have the gray words. If we click down on the More button, you can see that there's a blogs search data silo that Google has created. Okay. Now here you can see there's the official Google Reader blog, which will of course sunset when Google Reader retires, and you can see all of the various blogs associated with Google Reader. So you can go down here and read through the various blogs that I wanted to. Now, of course, if I wanted to go ahead and subscribe to one of these blogs, I could go ahead and do that using some of the tools that I wanted to. But this is now where you're going to find new content discovery in terms of new blogs in order to follow. Okay? So one of the great tools within Google Reader, as I said before, was that you could find new blogs right within the Google Reader tool. Here is where you're going to do it now, right within the Google Blogs area. You might see some of that in StumbleUpon, but more likely you're going to find that here under blogs within Google Blogs search. Okay, so just so you know. All right, so that covers really the business functions to replace, and now I sort of want to get into the tools that will be replacing Google Reader. At the top of the list is really Feedly. Feedly is a tool that is trying to do its best to replace Google Reader all told. They, upon Google's announcement, I think they jumped something like 100,000 users immediately, and then it was just staggering how the number of users that were jumping on the bandwagon with Feedly almost immediately. So Feedly, what they had done originally was, you can see here on their website, they have more than 3 million Google Reader users now who have switched to Feedly since the announcement. Now, the reason for switching to Feedly wasn't because Feedly was necessarily fantastic. I think it was really that Feedly was already an established interface for using and managing Google Reader already, and people panicked, and so they ran out to find another service. Well, it turns out that Feedly currently is basically a Google Reader management tool. It is not a standalone RSS technology, reader. So it becomes a little bit of a conflict. However, Feedly is currently working to build their own subscription interface, and at this point they've done a couple of updates that I've seen, at least on the website, that already does a lot of that. So they're working very hard to replace Google Reader, all told. Okay, but right now what you do is you log in. They ask you to log in through your Google account. It reads your Google Reader account and imports your subscriptions automatically. Okay, so while I still recommend that you go out there and download your Google Reader information through Takeout, you go to the Google Reader settings information, import, export from Takeout, and download that big zip archive file. You should still do that. But the other side is that Feedly will just automatically import your subscriptions from Google Reader. And then at that point, you get a quite beautiful interface for displaying your content. Now, I'm not that big on the aesthetics of my Google Reader, but it's starting to become the paradigm is just shifting to it being a standard that you have sort of a flip style, card style, like Pinterest almost, view of everything that you're reading. Okay, now, do I like that? I don't particularly have an opinion. I'm fairly indifferent about it. When I think about reading content, I generally want the words in front of me in slim columns, just like a newspaper, so that I can read them really quickly. And so the idea of these flipboards and flip styles is an adjustment for me, so I'll have to see whether or not I particularly like them. You'll have to also make that decision for yourself. Do those tiles make sense for you in terms of reading a large amount of content, even if it's a little amount of content, just reading it efficiently? So you'll want to be able to look at those things and make sure that you like the style of it. But Feedly is fairly easy to use. It's a fun interface, and so again, you can just import your Google Reader account, and it's available on all of the major platforms. So it's available on the iOS devices. It's available on Google Play. That means it's available within the Android platform. And you have the mobile components for Feedly as well. So if you go to feedly.com, you can go in there and establish it. So I just want to go in there and show you how to use Feedly really quickly, and that way you can sort of see what it looks like here. So here goes Feedly, and you can see that it just pulls everything in, and it has this main interface on your phone where you have these sort of tabs that it shows and so on and so forth. And then right here in the main feed area, when you log into Feedly, this is sort of how you see your content. So you see your main posts, and you'll see the title, and then of course in the gray text is the text of the first post that you're going to see. And let's just go into logging into Feedly. I think I may have actually disabled Feedly yesterday when doing some testing, so let's see if it actually lets me in. No, it's not. Yeah, so I can't show you inside Feedly, but basically you can see it here on the screen here. It's just a very white-spaced, interface. Let me see if I can get in there. Hold on with me one moment while I go into my tools and re-establish Feedly. Here he is. It didn't like that I uninstalled the Chrome plugin, most likely. Okay, so as you can see here, it's gone ahead and loaded the Feedly interface for me. So now I can go ahead and see, all of the items that might have shown up in a particular area. So if I click on my Android tab here, you can see that now I'm in the Android section, and it is showing me all of the Android articles for all of the blogs that I follow regarding Android, okay? And so if I click on this particular post, well, that is, I hover over it, you notice that it gives me a couple of options. It gives me the ability to open that particular article in a new tab. Again, it gives me the option to tweet, to send this item to Facebook, to send an item to LinkedIn, and then to use a product called Buffer. And Buffer app, if you go to bufferapp.com, and I'll talk about that shortly when we talk about Vienna, you can go ahead and post that automatically to Twitter and Facebook, and I believe LinkedIn all at the same time. So you can use those tools. Again, what's missing here is the gaping hole of no Google+. And so again, that's my biggest pet peeve with all of these services, is that they haven't yet integrated a direct to Google+ integration, and they need to do that in order to be able to survive. All of these software are going to have to do that. And so then you have the X button here in Feedly, and that of course gives you the ability to mark as read and then to hide it so that it can go away. All right, so you can pretty much see how these things work. You can go in and you can see the articles, and this was actually yesterday at Google I/O, is they announced Android Studio, which is an IDE for Android, and what that means is just a software development tool for people building within Android. It's an amazing opportunity for people who are software developers to use the new Android Studio. Anyway, so this is the article here, and then when we get down to whoops, scrolled by. When we get down to inside the article, you can see that they do have the share button to Google+. So there we go. The last time I looked at it, they didn't have this, so this is really great. So here we go. Feedly has the Google+ button here. They have Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Bufferly, and now they've added an email even. That's fantastic, which is another one of my great pet peeves with this software, is now removed. So now you can go ahead and click on the email, and you can also save a particular blog post for later, and you can also tag in here as well. Really, really great. If you wanted to go ahead and add content, you can personalize your feed by looking for feeds and other things. Again, this is a new and sort of developing tool, so as they're trying to replace Google Reader, they're going to be adding these new tools. So you can see here that they've decided to add this new find functionality, and you can type in a URL for a particular blog, a title of something, so a blog title or a particular topic by hashtag or otherwise, and now you can go ahead and discover content. So just in the time that between me researching for this webinar and me talking to you, you can see that they added new features right within the Feedly tool, which is fantastic. So now they're actually helping you with content discovery right within Feedly, and it's actually quite beautiful. All right, so that's a great new feature that I didn't even realize was here. So here we go. So you can just click on particular tool sections and hashtags, and it goes ahead and finds content for you right within the display. All right, so that's Feedly, and so that you have that. And let's move on to the other tools that are available to you. So this next tool is my favorite and the one that I have been using since I heard about the announcement of Google Reader's demise. And this one is called the Old Reader. And what it is basically Google Reader's old interface, just put into a different software server. So it's pretty simple. But basically, you log into the old Reader, and you have almost all of the functionality that you had with the old Google Reader interface. Okay. Now, a couple of problems with the old Reader is that it is the old Reader interface, but there's some pieces missing from it. It's not exactly what Google Reader is. So the content discovery part is not there. Obviously, the integration with Google Alerts isn't there. And right now, because of the number of people who are trying to transfer their subscriptions from Google Reader to the old Reader, there has been a backlog for some people in getting all of their Reader subscriptions moved over. It doesn't take very long. I mean, for me, it only took me a couple of hours, and I think for one of my accounts, it took me a day, where they were so backlogged. But I mean, that was in the very initial days of the transfer. So the old Reader, of course, just allows you to be able to sign in through Facebook, Google, or you can log in and register through your own email address and password. So again, if you're using a Google Apps account, you can just click on the Google icon and boom, you're in, and you use your Google Apps credentials to be able to log into Google Reader, and you're good to go. And so that's really, really helpful. And then, of course, you can go into the Google Reader interface, and I'm not going to take you into it. You can go ahead and play around in the system. And that's really one of the other recommendations that I'm going to make for you, which is to try all of these systems out while you have time. You still have enough time before Google shuts down. And even if and when Google shuts down, if you're listening to the archive of this webinar, you should go ahead and use several tools anyway. It doesn't hurt you to use the several tools, and just to see how they work for you. At the end of the day, though, you'll want to choose one tool where you'll primarily be using that data, so that you're not having to manage subscriptions in two different places. You don't want to have subscription that you don't want to listen to, read and consume anymore, and unsubscribe it from here, but then it doesn't unsubscribe in another place. You want that subscription feed to be synchronized among all of your devices and all of your computers. So if you're primarily desktop based, you're always looking at a desktop screen, then you can use something like the old Reader and not care about it. But if you're using the old Reader and you want to be able to consume this content on your mobile devices, a tablet or a phone, a smartphone on the road, then that might prove to be a problem for you, because now it's going to not be available to you in both settings. Of course, the old Reader will display on a mobile screen, so you can go ahead and load it up and it'll display on a mobile screen, but it's not quite mobile optimized yet. So it's not as fancy, I guess, in its view. But you can go ahead and test it out, and I'm sure that they're adding mobile functionality, to catch up with the fact that Google Reader is going away, and they need to catch up with everybody else. Next up is a software called Vienna. And Vienna is a Mac-based software. I'll go over a Windows-based software momentarily. But Vienna is actually free open source software, what we call FOSS. And the free open source software movement has developed all sorts of amazing software, and I'm actually going to be writing an ebook in the next 2 months about that, how to run your entire business using only free open source software. And really, really fascinating research I've been doing into all of this, and for those of you who are listening, yes, this is going to launch before my book, Google Your Small Business, and so this little ebook is really to help people, learn how to launch a business using free open source software, and also to replace various functionalities within the business if you happen to be using a desktop still and you want to go ahead and install some piece of tool or software to be able to manage your business. Well, Vienna is one of those types of free open source software. What that means is that you can freely download and use the software, and also you can contribute. If you happen to have a programming background, you can contribute to the development and future of this particular project. Well, Vienna fits all of the criteria for me in terms of what we want free open source software to be. It's a mature piece of software, it has a development community around it, and it has all the functions that we need it to. So this is a screen capture of what Vienna looks like. On the left-hand side panel, you have the subscriptions, and when you are open in the Mac, you have your toolbar at the top, and you'll just go into the file area and import the subscriptions. At that point, you'll go find your XML file from that you downloaded from Google Takeout through Google Reader, and you're going to go ahead and take that XML file and upload it into Vienna. Vienna is going to take that subscription and it's going to recreate your folder structure that you had in Google Reader. So if you had any folders set up and so on and so forth, it will set all those folders up for you and then immediately pull in all the subscriptions that you had in their current state. Okay, so what I found with regard to any of these downloaded softwares, native desktop software, is that one, when I'm on the road and I need to be able to access information, they do allow you some level of access to your feeds. So that's really great. The problem with that is that typically by the time, if you don't have web access on the road, so you say you grab your laptop, you downloaded all of your feeds, even then you still can't do certain things with an RSS feed reader, even when you have downloaded desktop software. However, if you do feel like the desktop software allows you to be able to sort of have that application running, you can minimize it to your taskbar and go on to other things and then come back to it, and you want it to be sort of scanning and pulling that information in the background, then downloaded desktop software is for you, and Vienna will do everything you need it to do. Again, Vienna allows you to be able to email and to also send to social media. The problem with, of course, the idea of it doing content curation is that this one especially does not yet have Google Plus integration. So it will not allow you to be able to share into Google Plus, which, of course, you could do in Google Reader, and now you can do in Feedly, which is amazing. But the real problem here is that you won't be able to do that. You can use Buffer app, and Buffer will allow you to be able to go ahead and automate that process to Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn, but it won't let you, of course, yet do Google+. It is one of the major requests for Buffer, so know that people are getting the message that, Buffer is getting the message that they need to add Google+ integration, but they just haven't yet. So here's hoping they do that soon. And so here on the left-hand side panel of Vienna, you can literally drag and drop particular subscriptions into folders. You can create new folders. You can do all sorts of really fun stuff all within the item. When you open up a new item, you can see that you can use the preview pane here, and you can also double-click on an item and it'll open it up in a new tab right within Vienna. So it won't push you out to Safari if you're using a Mac or Google Chrome or Firefox or another one of the major platforms, Opera, the Opera browser, or any of the other browsers. But so you have to, if you wanted to, you would have to manually move yourself over to the main browser. But the the functionality within Vienna in terms of rendering the articles and so on and so forth is really, really amazing. I really like it. So in general, you want to be able to go ahead and test out Vienna if you're on a Mac. Okay. If you're on a PC, Mozilla, you should know from Mozilla Firefox, the browser, I think it's the second or third most used browser in the world, and so Mozilla Firefox has actually a number of other software that it has developed, and one of those other software that it's developed is Thunderbird. Thunderbird is again, it's free open source software, and it is developed for being able to manage email, and so you can set up your entire email management system within Thunderbird, okay? And so it gives you a desktop client for being able to manage things. I used it for many, many years to manage my Gmail accounts because I had several Gmail accounts and I wanted to manage them all within one interface. Mozilla Thunderbird allowed me to be able to do that. And it's a great tool. So if you need an email management tool, go ahead and check it out. Well, Mozilla also developed something called SeaMonkey, and SeaMonkey is actually a suite of products. It sort of blends in a calendar and email. It sort of tries to be what Outlook is in a lot of ways. And by the way, I don't mention Outlook here, but Outlook in the slides, that is, but Outlook actually does have an RSS feed reading functionality that you can use within Outlook. So if you already use Outlook and you're looking to just add RSS feed, feeds to it, it's very easy. So just go ahead and Google Outlook RSS reader, and Outlook has the functionality built right into it. So you can use Outlook as well as a native Outlook tool. And I believe it's built into Outlook.com as well. So if you're using the cloud-based Outlook, you can use that as well. And if someone listening knows, please clarify, and I can answer it after the webinar. I can do the research if you really do have a question. So moving right along, Thunderbird, again, you have this left-hand side panel. You have this RSS news area, and then you go ahead and have your feeds, and then they show up very similar to Vienna does on the Mac. Okay, so you have the feeds that show. It shows the time it pulls it down, and the various feeds. You can organize these into folders and pretty much do all of those things that you were doing within that particular area. Now, the sharing functionality, the content curation functionality, is where you're going to be limited because Mozilla Thunderbird doesn't necessarily give you all of the functions that you want to. However, there are plugins for Mozilla Thunderbird so that if you're on a Windows machine and you're using Thunderbird, just like Mozilla Firefox, Firefox has all of these amazing extensions and plugins. Well, Thunderbird does also, and so I know that if there isn't one out there, there is likely a series of them being built for you right now because everyone's trying to sort of get ready for the Google Reader demise. Okay, so check out Thunderbird for that in that regard. Again, it's not going to really help you with content discovery, and it's going to be completely fine for the sort of managing of the inbound information, but content curation is also going to be an issue as well for you. So just poke around it and see where and how it has sharing functionalities and whether there's a plugin for you that might work to help you share to your particular network. So go ahead and check it out. Next up is, of course, using the mobile technology, and if you are exclusively mobile as it relates to managing your content, you might want to look at Google Currents and scratch that, because Google Currents actually does have a web-based interface, so you can use this on the web as well as on your mobile phone. But Google basically created a product called Google Currents, and Google Currents basically takes a series of curated news and magazines and other periodicals and publishes them into a beautiful interface. And so instead of RSS feeds and thinking about RSS feeds, you can just go out there and look at the various types of periodicals that are out there and subscribe to those, and it just melds it into this beautiful feed so that you can stay, you guessed it, current with regard to the information that you subscribe to. So lots of the major news publications and magazine publications are already in Google Currents. So you can just go in there and say, I want to read Forbes, and I want to read this particular magazine, and it just basically pulls all of that information together in a sort of a beautiful layout, and you can start reading the magazines right within Google Currents. I like Google Currents. It doesn't seem to fit a replacement for me for Google Reader. However, if you are not using a Google Reader already and you don't want to really go into that perspective, this can still help you keep on top of your sort of world, notwithstanding. So if you're interested in keeping on top of things, this is a great tool. Next up is GReader. GReader is for the Android platform, and GReader is attempting to replace Google Reader. So again, this was something that was like Feedly, which managed your Google Reader subscriptions, and now what GReader is doing is working to replace the subscription management function that Google Reader had already done. So within GReader, if you're on a mobile device and you want to be able to just manage it all from a mobile device, whether you have an Android tablet or a phone or both, you can now get all of that content right there within GReader. I think I'm moving almost exclusively to reading my reader content, my RSS reader content, from a tablet. Because of my travel schedule and other things, I find myself, it's a good display size. I have a Google Nexus 7 that I really like, and go figure that I like a Google product, but it's really wonderful. And so I have that display, and it allows me to go ahead and get all that information. GReader is a great Google Reader experience, as they say. It says it's the best Google Reader experience, and I pretty much agree with them. So from a tablet perspective, you have the ability to read all of that stuff, and then you can also jump over to your Android-based phone if you have one and read that content there on the smaller screen. But I really like the ability to manage. When you turn the tablet to the side, you see the subscriptions on the left-hand side, just like you would in a website, and then you see the tiles or the display of the feeds in a list, so that you can go ahead and manage through the list of content and go ahead and really consume, go ahead and consume the articles you want to, and then process the other ones that you don't want to by marking them all red and getting them out of the way. Okay, so GReader is an amazing tool, and again, by July, they've already made notification to everybody that they are going to be ready to take over where Google Reader has left off. Okay, so they want to step in and help you. Next up is a tool called Flipboard. Flipboard is absolutely a different animal, very similar to Google Currents, and Flipboard is a really beautiful design interface, where you basically have these tiles, that you are moving through the interface for. And so if you log into flipboard.com or download any of the apps, again, they're available on major platforms, iOS and Android, and you flip through them, and you just sort of, you can flip right and flip up, and you can see the new articles displaying, very beautifully, and so on and so forth. Again, whether I particularly like this tile concept or not, it's certainly a beautiful interface and certainly worth checking out. So I would say check out Flipboard and see whether or not you really like the idea at all. And again, Flipboard has a management tool, but it's not quite Google Reader. Again, it's if you are just leaving Google Reader altogether, the Google Reader concept, and you just want to stay on top of particular industries, Flipboard is using their internal algorithms, very similar to Google is using their own internal algorithm to just tell you what you think you need. Okay, and so this is really one of those cases where they're just trying to help you keep on top of the best information right up front. So Flipboard does a pretty good job, and I like reading it on occasion. It's not my main Google Reader interface, but I think that it's interesting to sort of pay attention to, all told. So those are the tools to replace Google Reader, all told. Again, before I talked about StumbleUpon for content discovery, obviously, and Google Alerts for the inbound, marketing research, making sure that you're staying on top of competitors and your own business brand names, your name, your key employees, those types of things. Use Google Alerts for that. And then for the inbound information, where you're just tracking industry information and other kinds of marketing information, you can do that through these various tools. I'd originally asterisked Feedly because Feedly, of course, didn't have, up until the point where I showed it to you just now, the ability to have subscriptions. But now that it has the ability to manage subscriptions and do content discovery, Feedly does end up being sort of the top tier in the market. So they're the ones to beat in terms of the other software developers out there. But you have the old reader.com. I really like that interface because it's, it gives me the old Google Reader interface. It's very nostalgic. And then, of course, you have Vienna on the Mac. You have Mozilla Thunderbird on Windows. And there are other tools out there, but really I'm just giving you the ones that I think are the best. Then on, of course, iOS, you have Current, Flipboard, and Feedly. And so if you want to if you're using the reader on your desktop, on iOS and Android products, you'll probably want to go with Feedly, because Feedly will manage in all three of those places with a central repository. Then you have GReader, GReader, Current, Flipboard, and Feedly on the Android platform. So you have all of those tools sort of wrapped up together for the Android platform as well. And you can go ahead and check those out. Currents is a really great tool. I think you should check it out even if you don't use it as a primary tool. It's a really fun Google product, and it really is good for capturing business content, I believe premium content, that you otherwise wouldn't be able to capture for free through it. So if you can get Forbes or other magazine content for free without having to subscribe, why not, right? So that brings me to the end of the presentation. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to take those, and we can address those questions in the time left.
We don't have any questions so far.
Okay. Well, I hope everybody has a great time with the transfer of their Google Reader accounts. I think it'll be it's not going to be as big a deal as everyone sort of thinks. And actually, I've been starting to go through my Google Reader account and actually looking at the various subscriptions and deciding, do I want to follow them on Twitter? Do I want to follow them on Google+? Do I want to follow them on Facebook? Do I want to follow them on LinkedIn? And then removing the blog subscription so that I'm getting that content if they are publishing that content there, and sometimes they aren't, so I'll continue to follow their blog. But if they're publishing it already there every time, then I don't need to follow their subscription. I'm basically following them twice. And so for efficiency purposes, I'm actually removing, this has been a really good process for me, because I've started to remove some of these subscriptions that have been sort of building up in the system, and I've been seeing the tweets anyway, so I'm looking at them twice. So this has been a really great opportunity for me to cull through those. There are going to always be blogs that I want to follow, from that reader interface. And so this has been a really great process for me, and I hope that it is for you guys as well.
Well, thanks, Ray. We don't have any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. Thanks, everyone, for participating today. Today's webinar was recorded, and it'll be posted on the Virginia SBDC website under Live Webinars and Recordings. Tomorrow you'll receive a follow-up email on the webinar with an evaluation attached. Please help us continue to improve our webinars by filling out that evaluation. If you'd like to do that now, I have posted the link in the chat window. See you on May 30th for our next webinar, Who Needs an IT Department When You've Got Google? Thanks, everyone.